dynamic duo administering their justice.
I don't think we're getting through to you.
For goodness sake, give me a hint.
Beginning new relationships.
Should I bring some bread and dips? No, I don't think so. Maybe just some condoms and a slab.
And ending old ones.
I mean, it's been a month. You can know someone too well.
It's Kits and Fade, 9:30 Monday.
Tuesday, confrontation.
Do you know how many people on those calendars are dissatisfied with your service?
And your question assumes something that I don't accept.
Contractual obligations in business advertising. And mediation.
We come here to try and settle this.
The way to keep disputes out of the courts. 8 o'clock Tuesday on ABC.
Next week, a 7:30 report exclusive. A world breakthrough in disease targeting by a Queensland scientist.
It really is of quite enormous potential benefit.
Deadly diseases, a biotechnology breakthrough set to save millions of lives.
The virus is being presented to the body in such a way that the body recognises it's being invaded by a virus and it responds appropriately.
That's next, 7:30.
Good evening, Angela Pearman with ABC National News. New Zealand could face a hung parliament after early counting from today's election. Jim Bolger's ruling National Party leads the count, but is yet to clinch an absolute majority. Computer projections put the Nationals 3 seats clear of the Labor opposition, with minor parties a chance of winning the balance of power. The referendum proposal for proportional representation looks likely to be narrowly passed. The chairman of the Council for Aboriginal Reconciliation has given guarded support for Richard Court's Mabo plan. Pat Dodson says recognition of traditional land use by Aborigines could be a step forward.
Premier Court accepted an invitation to explain his Mabo plan to the Reconciliation Council last night. After an hour and a half behind closed doors, he emerged happy with the hearing he'd received.
They gave me a good hearing and I hope they now have a better understanding of what we are proposing to do with this legislation.
Councillors say the Premier presented a persuasive case, and though not persuasive enough for most Aboriginal members, it did win some support from Council Chairman Pat Dodson. Mr Dodson has endorsed the legislation's central principle of extinguishing native title and replacing it with a new statutory right to traditional use.
It's not about the title, but about the usages. And if this is intended to provide an acceptance of traditional usage, then it's got to be able to do that.
Mr Dodson warned the Western Australian government that those traditional usage rights must have the same authority as non-Aboriginal rights.
Anything that doesn't provide for a level of equality between the ways the Aboriginal people would exercise their rights and the way others would exercise their rights, I think is going to be a recipe for disaster.
Police have had leave cancelled to continue an intensive search after the discovery of 7 bodies in the Belanglo forest. Today, 2 dogs trained to sniff out human remains returned to the operation. Following the pattern of bush graves, police began charting all known fire and logging trails.
We'll have teams going out today making assessments and evaluation not only of distances but of the terrain that we have to follow.
Task Force Air now plans to include an area of 50 square kilometres in the search. The remains of an unknown Australian soldier have begun the long journey of repatriation 75 years after his death in the Great War. After lying in state at the Australian War Memorial, the coffin was taken to France's Cambrai Air Base. There, French armed forces conducted a ceremony of gratitude to those Australians who died on the Western Front. The remains were then flown to Paris. A special Qantas flight will return the unknown soldier to Australia. The journey will end with the coffin's interment in a ceremony in Canberra on Remembrance Day. And I'll be back with more news after the bill.
The China gold rush is on. The lure, cheap labour.
In China, they work 7 days a week and take 1 Sunday off a month.
In Australia, he paid 20 times as much.
Australian workers must realise that and must be prepared to be flexible.
For other Australian businesses, it's the world's biggest boom.
By a huge margin, it's bigger than anything I've ever seen.
China Fever, Four Corners, 8:30 Monday.
It was treachery with a smile on its face.
Margaret Thatcher speaks openly and exclusively about her years in Downing Street.
She said, Jim, I don't need a cold to be sexy.
Her friends and enemies are equally frank.
I thought it was highly insulting.
The idea that somebody else might have a valid point of view, which might be a right point of view, wouldn't enter her mind.
One began to think, well, is it because she's a woman and you're a man?
No one had had the guts to put it right.
Thatcher, The Downing Street Years, a stunning 4-part series, premieres 10 o'clock tonight. They'd lived in the isolation of New Guinea for 40,000 years.
As early as I can remember, all I ever wanted to do was go to New Guinea and climb mountains and discover new tribes.
Into the wilderness went the Australian Kayabs.
Paved streets make a strange contrast with grass-skirted natives.
The ideal certainly was celibacy.
Papua New Guinea being like a football ground.
Australia's only attempt at colonisation. Colonists for a Day, 8:30 Sunday.
Good evening, Angela Pearman with ABC National News. There's been a dramatic swing against Jim Bolger's National Party government in today's New Zealand election. The country now faces the prospect of a hung parliament with the balance of power in the hands of new minor parties, as the ABC's Craig McMurtry reports from Auckland.
Despite a campaign described as boring, New Zealand has its most exciting election result in years. But for the ruling National Party, it's a night of disappointment. While Prime Minister Jim Bolger leads the party holding the largest number of seats, he appears to be one short of a majority. In New Zealand's 99-seat parliament, computer predictions suggest the National Party will hold 49 seats to Labour's 46, with the minor parties, the Alliance and New Zealand First, winning 2 each. Several seats are so close, special votes will decide the final outcome. It may be days before a final result is known. A much clearer verdict on parliamentary reform, with New Zealand opting for change. Nearly 54% of voters supporting proportional representation, a new system of voting which will now replace the old first-past-the-post system.
Police have widened the area to be searched in the Belanglo State Forest, where the bodies of 7 murdered travellers have already been discovered. Searchers spent today mapping out all known trails in the forest.
A smaller search party set out this morning to comb the area where the last 3 backpacker bodies were found.
Good girl, Aisha. Where's the girl? Find it, Aisha.
Police have again called on the help of 2 dogs, specially trained to sniff out human remains.
In a good day, I think we've covered about 3/4 of a kilometre by 400 metres wide.
This time, the dogs and their handlers will stay on the job until the whole search area has been covered. Police aren't sure exactly how long that will be, but admit there's still a long way to go. Today, after the search near the graves was finished, police started to map out the known fire and logging trails.
We'll have teams going out today making assessments and evaluation not only of distances but of the terrain that we have to follow.
They'll use that information to draw a grid over the area, stretching around 50 square kilometres. Police have been searching the Belanglo forest bushland almost continuously for the past month. Despite their efforts, there's still more than 80% of the search area yet to be covered.
A German company has triggered panic across Europe after releasing blood products potentially contaminated with the HIV virus. The German government has recommended thousands of people be tested for AIDS.
In this clinic in Frankfurt, as in others throughout Germany, people afraid they've contracted the AIDS virus are calling in by the hundreds for help. As many as 2 million Germans may have been exposed to tainted blood through transfusions since 1980. Over 2,000 are HIV positive. There could be hundreds more. What started as a criminal case against one company, UB Plasma, accused of using unreliable AIDS testing in order to save money, has turned into a health crisis.
And in the beginning, the size looked as a small size scandal. Now more and more facts can be added to the list, so surprises are possible.
UB Plasma has been closed, 4 of its employees arrested. Doctors are advising those who had blood transfusions in recent years to get an AIDS test, adding that the risk of infection is relatively small. But fear is spreading beyond German borders. Greece, Austria, Sweden, Switzerland, Saudi Arabia all bought blood products from UB Plasma. Other European countries are combing their files.
And now a look at tomorrow's national weather. Showers are forecast for Melbourne and Hobart, and a fine day for the rest of the capitals. And that's all from the newsroom tonight, but stay with us for Birds of a Feather. Good night.
The dynamic duo administering their justice.
I don't think we're getting through to you.
For goodness sake, give me a hint.
Beginning new relationships.
Should I bring some bread and dips? No, I don't think so. Maybe just some condoms and a slab.
And ending old ones.
I mean, it's been a month. You can know someone too well.
It's Kits and Faye, 9:30 Monday.
On April 25th, the whole town takes part in an elaborate procession.
Like many a country town, Hay in New South Wales lost 1 in 5 of its young men in the Great War. How will that war be remembered in the next century? Recently, some old diggers made an emotional return to the battlefields of France. In Villers-Bretonneux, as in Australia, they have pride of place. But what of the future? On the eve of the 75th anniversary of Armistice Day, ABC proudly presents Cenotaph, 8:30 Wednesday.